Kyle Morrison sat in his quarters aboard the Phoenix, staring at the datapad in his hands. The blue light from the screen made his face look tired. He had been reading the same reports for hours, trying to memorize every detail about the Valerans. His coffee had gone cold long ago. The reports painted a clear picture. The Valeran Empire was powerful and dangerous. They controlled 17 star systems. Their military had never lost a war. Their queens were warriors who earned their thrones through combat. Everything about their culture centered on strength, honor, and conquest. Kyle rubbed his eyes and set down the pad. He was 42 years old and had spent 20 years in diplomatic service. He had negotiated with difficult people before, but this felt different. This felt like walking into a lion's den with nothing but words for protection. A knock on his door broke his thoughts. Lisa Bennett entered without waiting for an answer. She was his chief advisor and the smartest person he knew. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a tight bun and she carried her own datapad. "Still reading?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "Trying to find something useful," Kyle said. "Something that tells me how to talk to a warrior queen without getting us all killed." Lisa sat down across from him. "The Valerans respect strength. They despise weakness. They see diplomacy as something weak species do when they cannot fight. And they see us as weak," Kyle finished. "Most of the galaxy does," Lisa said. "We have been in space for only 15 years. We have no great military victories. We prefer talking to fighting. To them, we look like easy prey." Kyle stood and walked to the small window. Outside, space looked empty and cold. Somewhere ahead of them was Kethros Prime, the Valeran homeworld. They would arrive in less than 6 hours. Why did they ask for this meeting? Kyle wondered aloud. If they think we are weak, why bother with us at all? "That is what worries Captain Holland," Lisa said. "He thinks they might be testing us, seeing if we are worth conquering." Kyle turned back to face her. "What do you think?" Lisa was quiet for a moment. "I think they are curious. Humans are different from other species they have met. We do strange things. We create art, we explore for no profit. We care about things that have no strategic value. Maybe they want to understand why. Or maybe they want to know if that makes us dangerous," Kyle said. Before Lisa could answer, the ship's communication system beeped. Captain Holland's voice came through. "Ambassador Morrison, please come to the bridge. We are approaching Kethros Prime." Kyle and Lisa made their way through the narrow corridors of the Phoenix. The ship was small compared to the massive warships that dominated the galaxy. It was built for diplomacy, not war. Fast enough to run if needed, but not strong enough to fight. On the bridge, Captain Holland stood looking at the main screen. He was a tall man with dark hair and the bearing of a soldier. He had served in Earth's defense forces before becoming a diplomatic escort. His hand rested near the weapons console, a habit he could not break. "There," he said, pointing at the screen. Kyle looked and felt his stomach tighten. 3 massive ships hung in space ahead of them. Each one was 10 times the size of the Phoenix. Their hulls were dark metal covered in weapons. They looked like predators waiting to strike. "Valeran cruisers," Holland said. "They moved to intercept us the moment we entered the system." "Are they hostile?" Kyle asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "Not yet," Holland said, "but they are making sure we know they could be." A message came through on the communication channel. The voice was deep and harsh, speaking in standard Galactic with a heavy accent. "Human vessel Phoenix, you are cleared to land at the Royal Palace. Deviate from the provided coordinates and you will be destroyed. Comply immediately." "Friendly bunch," muttered Arya Cross, the ship's security chief. She stood nearby, her hand also near a weapon. Her auburn hair was tied back and her eyes never stopped moving, always watching for danger. "Send our acknowledgement," Kyle said. "Tell them we are honored by Queen Zathara's invitation and will follow their instructions exactly." Holland gave the order. The Phoenix began its descent toward the planet below. As they dropped through the atmosphere, Kyle got his first real look at Kethros Prime. The planet was beautiful in a harsh way. Cities of metal and stone spread across the continents. But between the cities were vast open areas. Training grounds, Lisa explained. Places where Valeran soldiers practiced for war. Then Kyle saw something unexpected. As they approached the royal palace, he noticed green spaces. Gardens. Elaborate gardens surrounding the massive fortress that served as the queen's home. "Those gardens," Kyle said, "they do not match what we know about Valeran culture." Lisa glanced at the screen and shrugged. "Probably a tribute from a conquered world. Valerans take prizes from the species they defeat." But something about that explanation felt wrong to Kyle. The gardens looked too carefully maintained, too thoughtfully designed. They looked loved. The Phoenix landed in a heavily guarded spaceport. Armed Valeran soldiers in powered armor surrounded the ship before the engines had even cooled. Each soldier stood over 6 feet tall, their armor making them look even larger. "Remember," Lisa said as they prepared to leave the ship, "show respect but not fear. Acknowledge their strength. Do not make sudden movements, and whatever you do not insult the Queen." Kyle straightened his formal diplomatic uniform. It felt thin compared to the armor he saw outside. "Anything else I should know?" "Yes," Lisa said. "Do not mention the word peace. They see it as a weakness. Talk about mutual benefit, strategic advantage, anything but peace." The landing ramp lowered. Hot air rushed in, carrying scents Kyle could not identify. He took a deep breath and walked forward. Behind him came Lisa, Arya, and 2 other staff members. Captain Holland stayed with the ship, ready to launch if things went wrong. A Valeran officer met them at the bottom of the ramp. He was tall and scarred, with cold eyes that looked at them like they were insects. "Follow me," he said. "Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not touch anything. Do not wander." They walked through corridors of stone and metal. Everything was massive, built for people larger than humans. The walls were decorated with weapons and battle trophies. Paintings showed Valeran warriors in combat. Statues depicted queens from the past, all holding weapons. Finally, they reached a huge set of doors. The Valeran officer stopped and turned to face them. "You will wait here until the Queen is ready. When the doors open, walk forward and stop at the marked line. Bow your head when addressing her. Do not approach unless invited. Understood?" "Understood," Kyle said. The officer left them alone in the antechamber. Through tall windows, Kyle could see those gardens again. They looked peaceful, almost out of place in this fortress of war. "Are you ready?" Lisa asked quietly. Kyle was about to answer when the massive doors began to open. A voice like thunder announced from within, "Her Imperial Majesty, Queen Zathara, conqueror of the Krell worlds, breaker of the Thanix Rebellion, supreme commander of the Valeran fleets." Kyle took a breath and stepped forward into the throne room, knowing that everything humanity had worked for in the galaxy might depend on what happened in the next few minutes. Queen Zathara walked into the throne room. Kyle had seen pictures of her, but they did not prepare him for the real thing. She was almost 7 feet tall. Her body was strong and athletic. She moved like a predator, smooth and dangerous. Her skin was gray-blue, which was normal for Valerans. She had scars on her arms and shoulders. These were not battle wounds. They were ceremonial markings that showed her status. Her face was beautiful in a sharp, angular way. Her eyes were violet and intense. They looked at everything and missed nothing. She wore armor that was both functional and decorative. It was made of dark metal with gold and silver patterns. The armor was designed to protect but also to intimidate. It worked. Kyle felt small standing in front of her. Behind the Queen walked her advisors and guards. They all carried weapons. They all had medals and honors. This was a court of warriors. Zathara walked to her throne and sat down. She looked at Kyle and his team. Her face showed no emotion. The silence in the room was heavy. Kyle stepped forward. He had practiced this greeting many times. "Your Majesty," he said. His voice was calm and respectful. "I am Ambassador Kyle Morrison of Earth. My people send their greetings. We come in peace, seeking friendship between our worlds." Zathara looked at him for a long moment. Then she spoke. Her voice was powerful and clear. "Earth, a young species. You have been in space for only 15 years. You control 1 star system and a few colonies. You have no significant military power. You have won no great battles." She paused. Why should the Valeran Empire care about Earth? The question was direct and challenging. Kyle knew this was a test. He chose his words carefully. "You are right, Your Majesty. We are young. We are not warriors like your people. But we offer different strengths. Humans are good at medicine. We have advanced agricultural techniques. We excel at building connections between different cultures. We believe the galaxy needs more than just military power." One of the Queen's advisors laughed. He was a large male with many scars. "Medicine and farming," he said mockingly. "The galaxy respects strength, not gardens." Lisa tensed beside Kyle. Arya's hand moved closer to her weapon. But Kyle remained calm. Zathara raised her hand. The advisor fell silent. General Kryn speaks harshly, she said. But he speaks truth as we Valorans see it. Strength is what matters. Power is what matters. Your people have neither. Kyle felt the opportunity slipping away. This meeting was not going well. Zathara was preparing to dismiss them. He needed to say something, but what? At that moment, a breeze came through the high windows. It carried the smell of flowers. Kyle's attention was drawn to the windows. He could see the gardens outside. They were beautiful. The contrast struck him. Here was this warrior queen, surrounded by weapons and war trophies. But outside her palace were these peaceful, beautiful gardens. Someone had spent years caring for them. Someone who appreciated more than just battle. Before he could stop himself, Kyle spoke. Your Majesty, he said, I noticed your gardens when we arrived. They are remarkable. I have traveled to many worlds, but I have rarely seen such beauty. It must take great care to maintain them. The throne room went completely silent. Kyle felt Lisa stiffen beside him. The Valerian guards looked confused. General Kryn's face showed surprise and suspicion. Kyle continued, not sure if he was making things better or worse. It speaks to an elegance of spirit. A warrior who sees only battle misses half of what life offers. But someone who can appreciate both strength and beauty, that is true wisdom. The silence grew heavier. Kyle suddenly realized he might have made a terrible mistake. In a culture that valued strength above all else, had he just insulted the queen by calling her elegant instead of fearsome? Lisa leaned close and whispered urgently, Kyle, what are you doing? But Kyle kept his eyes on Queen Zathara. Her expression had changed. The cold, distant look was gone. Now she looked surprised, then suspicious, then something else he could not identify. Zathara stood up slowly. She walked down the steps from her throne. She moved toward Kyle. The sound of her armored boots echoed in the silent room. The guards shifted nervously. Arya's hand was now definitely near her weapon. The tension was so thick Kyle could almost feel it pressing on his skin. Zathara stopped directly in front of Kyle. She towered over him. She looked down at him with those intense violet eyes. Her face was unreadable. When she spoke, her voice was quieter than before. It had an edge to it. Was it anger? Kyle could not tell. You notice my gardens, she said. It was not quite a question. Yes, Your Majesty. And you decided to mention them in a diplomatic meeting. Why? Kyle met her gaze. He could try to make up a diplomatic answer. He could claim it was strategy. But something told him that would be wrong. So he told the truth. Because they were beautiful, he said simply. Because they surprised me. Everything we learned about your culture focused on military strength. But those gardens showed something different. Something more. I could not help but comment on them. Is this a diplomatic trick? Zathara asked. Her voice was sharp. Did your intelligence services tell you about my personal interests? No, Kyle said. I am being honest with you. Maybe that is not very diplomatic. But I saw something beautiful and I said so. In human culture, that is not a weakness. The ability to create beauty alongside strength is a mark of wisdom. Zathara stared at him. Kyle held her gaze even though his heart was pounding. This moment would determine everything. Then something changed in the queen's face. The hard, suspicious look softened slightly. Not much, but Kyle noticed it. Come with me, Zathara said suddenly. General Kryn stepped forward. Your Majesty, is that wise? These humans are strangers. Let me send guards with you. Zathara turned and gave him a look that could freeze fire. I am the Queen of the Valorant Empire. I have conquered worlds. I do not need guards to protect me from one unarmed human diplomat. Her voice was cold and absolute. Kryn bowed his head and stepped back. Zathara looked at Kyle again. Well, are you coming? Lisa grabbed Kyle's arm. Are you sure about this? She whispered urgently. Kyle looked at the queen. She was waiting. Something important was happening here. He could feel it. He had to trust his instinct. I am sure, he said to Lisa. Then to Zathara. I would be honored, Your Majesty. Zathara turned and walked toward a side door. Kyle followed her. Behind him, he could hear confused murmurs from the Valorant court. This was not normal protocol. This was unprecedented. As they left the throne room, Kyle glanced back. Lisa looked worried. Arya had her hand on her communicator, ready to call for help if needed. The Valorant advisors looked shocked and confused, but Kyle kept walking. He was following an alien queen to an unknown destination. It was either the bravest or the stupidest thing he had ever done. He would find out soon which one it was. Kyle followed Queen Zathara through a long corridor. The hallway started to change. At first there were weapons and battle flags on the walls, but as they walked, the decorations became softer. The harsh military feel faded away. They went through a door. Kyle stopped and stared. They were in a garden. But this was not just any garden. This was the most beautiful garden Kyle had ever seen. There were plants from many different worlds. They were arranged with great care and skill. Water flowed in small streams. There were bridges made of smooth stone. Paths wound through flowering trees. The air smelled sweet. Birds sang in the branches. Everything was peaceful. This was not a public garden. This was private, personal. This was a place where someone came to think and to find peace. Zathara walked to a bench under a large tree. She sat down. She did not look at Kyle. She looked at the garden. "I have maintained this garden for 30 years, she said. Her voice was different now. It was softer, more human. "I started it before I became queen. Through wars and conquests and political battles, I have kept these plants alive." Kyle sat down carefully on another bench. He waited for her to continue. "In 30 years, Zathara continued, thousands of diplomats have come to my court. Kings and generals, politicians and traders. Every one of them saw the warrior queen. They saw the conqueror. They saw military power." She paused. "You are the first one who noticed my garden." Kyle did not know what to say, so he said nothing. He just listened. "My people used to value more than just wars," Zathara said. "Long ago, Valorans created art and music. We built beautiful things. We appreciated beauty. But centuries of constant warfare changed us. Now if you show interest in anything except fighting, you are seen as weak. Even queens must hide such things." She looked at Kyle. "Do you know what it is like to hide part of yourself? To pretend you are only one thing when you are so much more?" "Yes," Kyle said quietly. "Everyone hides parts of themselves sometimes. It is part of being alive," Zathara nodded. "But you humans do not have to hide as much. I have studied your species. You create art, you make music, you write poetry. You explore for the joy of discovery, not just for resources. You form friendships based on genuine connection, not just strategic advantage. Other species see this as weakness," Kyle said. "Other species are fools," Zathara said firmly. "You humans have reached the stars without losing your souls. That is not weakness. That is a kind of strength the galaxy has forgotten." Kyle began to understand. "Is that why you asked for this meeting? Not because you need human military help?" Zathara stood and walked to a flowering bush. She touched one of the blooms gently. "I am tired," she said. "Tired of endless conquest. Tired of watching my people become nothing but soldiers. I want to leave a different legacy. I want my people to remember that we can be more than warriors." "But you cannot do it alone," Kyle said. "No. If I suddenly announce that the Empire should value art and beauty, my rivals will use it against me. They will say I have become soft, weak. They will challenge my rule." She turned back to Kyle. "But if I form an alliance with humans, if I bring your artists and teachers and philosophers here as part of that alliance, I can introduce these ideas slowly. I can frame it as learning about a new ally." Kyle stood up. "You want a cultural exchange, not a military alliance, and I want both," Zathara said. "Your people need protection. There are empires in this galaxy that would crush Earth without thought. The Valoran military can provide that protection. In exchange, you share your culture with us. You remind my people of what we once were and could be again." "This is risky," Kyle said. "For both of us. If your rivals discover the real reason for this alliance, it could cause you problems. And if my people think we are just being used, they might refuse." "Yes," Zathara agreed. "It is risky, but sometimes the biggest risks bring the greatest rewards." Kyle walked through the garden thinking. This was so much more than he expected. They came seeking a simple military agreement. Instead, they had a chance to influence an entire civilization. "Why did you tell me all this?" Kyle asked. "You could have kept your true goals secret. You could have made a standard military agreement and introduced the cultural exchange slowly, without explaining." Zathara smiled. It was the first time Kyle had seen her smile. It transformed her face. "Because you noticed my garden," she said simply. "Because you saw something that everyone else missed. That told me you might understand what I am trying to do." "And if I had not noticed?" Kyle asked. "Then I would have sent you away with polite refusals. I would have waited for another opportunity. She looked at him seriously. But you did notice. So now I am taking a chance. I am trusting you. Kyle felt the weight of that trust. An alien queen was sharing her deepest hopes with him. She was making herself vulnerable. That took courage. I need to know something, Kyle said. If we agree to this, what exactly do you need from Earth? Zathara walked back to the bench and sat down. Send us your best cultural ambassadors, artists, musicians, teachers, philosophers. Not just experts studying us, but genuine practitioners of your arts. Let them work with young Valorans who are curious about different ways of thinking. You want us to teach your people, Kyle said. I want you to share with them. There is a difference. Teaching implies superiority. Sharing implies exchange. Your people learn about us, we learn about you. She paused. And slowly, very slowly, some of my people might remember that there is more to life than conquest. How long will this take? Kyle asked. Generations, Zathara said honestly. Changing a culture takes time. I cannot do it in my lifetime. But I can start the process. I can plant seeds. She gestured to the garden. Like these plants. I plant them. I care for them. Some will not survive, but others will grow and spread and eventually transform this place. Kyle understood the metaphor. He looked around the beautiful garden. Then he looked at Queen Zathara. She was offering humanity something remarkable. Not just protection, but purpose. A chance to make a real difference in the galaxy. I will need to consult with my government, Kyle said, but I believe they will agree. This is exactly the kind of mission humanity wants in the galaxy. We do not want to be conquerors. We want to be builders, connectors. This alliance gives us that chance. Zathara stood and extended her hand. It was a human gesture. She had studied human customs. Then let us build something new together, Ambassador Morrison. Something that goes beyond military treaties and trade agreements. Let us try to change the galaxy one person at a time. Kyle shook her hand. Her grip was strong but not crushing. It was the grip of someone who chose when to use their strength and when to show gentleness. As they walked back toward the palace, Kyle felt something he had not expected to feel today. Hope. Real hope for what humans and Valorans might accomplish together. 3 weeks had passed since Kyle's first meeting with Queen Zathara. The formal treaty had been signed in a ceremony broadcast across the galaxy. On the surface, it looked like any other alliance. Military protection in exchange for trade and technology access. But Kyle knew the truth. Buried in the formal language were provisions for cultural exchange. Human artists and teachers would come to Valeran worlds. The official reason was to help both species understand each other better. The real reason was something far more ambitious. Kyle had remained on Kethros Prime as Earth's permanent ambassador. He met with Zathara regularly, sometimes in formal settings with advisors present, sometimes in the garden where it all began. In those private moments, they planned how to transform a civilization without anyone noticing. Today, Kyle stood at the spaceport waiting for the first group of cultural ambassadors to arrive from Earth. Lisa stood beside him, reviewing profiles on her datapad. Grace Harper, sculptor, Lisa read. Known for works that explore the relationship between strength and beauty. Nathan Cole, philosopher specializing in ethics of power. Maya Chen, musician who blends different cultural traditions. They were chosen carefully, Kyle said. Each one brings something that might resonate with Valeran culture. A human transport ship descended through the atmosphere. It was smaller than Valeran vessels, more elegant. Kyle smiled, thinking how even Earth's ships reflected their values. The 3 ambassadors emerged from the ship looking nervous but determined. Grace was tall with silver hair, her hands scarred from years of working with stone. Nathan wore simple clothes that somehow looked dignified. Maya carried a strange instrument Kyle did not recognize. Kyle greeted them warmly. Welcome to Kethros Prime. I hope your journey was comfortable. Grace looked around at the heavily armed guards and military architecture. It is intimidating, she admitted. Everything I read said the Valorans have no interest in art. That is what they want everyone to believe, Kyle said. The truth is more complicated. Come. There is someone you need to meet. He led them through the palace corridors. The humans drew stares from Valoran guards and staff. Some looks were curious. Others were dismissive. A few seemed almost hopeful, though those were quickly hidden. They reached the garden entrance. Kyle paused with his hand on the door. What you are about to see is a secret. Queen Zathara is trusting you with something precious. Please remember that." He opened the door. The three ambassadors stepped through and stopped in wonder. Grace gasped. Nathan's eyes went wide. Maya smiled like she had just heard the most beautiful music. Zathara stood among the flowers wearing lighter armor than usual. She looked almost peaceful here, away from the throne room and its demands. "Welcome," she said to the humans. "Ambassador Morrison tells me you are artists and teachers. I hope you will help me show my people that beauty and strength can exist together." Grace approached slowly, looking at the carefully arranged plants. "You created all this? While ruling an empire and leading armies?" "I needed this place," Zathara said simply, "to remember that there is more to life than conquest. But I cannot share it openly, not yet. That is where you come in." Over the next hour, Zathara explained her plan. The human ambassadors would work with young Valoran nobles, officially teaching them about human culture. Really, they would help these Valerans rediscover their own lost traditions. "There are those among my people who remember the old ways," Zathara said. "Those who create in secret as I maintain this garden. They will be your students, but really you will be their allies." Nathan spoke carefully, and when others notice the change, when it becomes clear that these sessions are about more than studying humans, by then, we hope enough Valerans will have rediscovered their love of beauty that it will be harder to suppress, Zathara said. "Change must come slowly like plants growing. Too fast and my rivals will crush it. Too slow and I will die before seeing it bloom." The first sessions began the next day. Kyle watched as Grace met with 3 young Valeran nobles in a room decorated with weapons and battle honors. The Valerans looked uncomfortable, unsure why they had been summoned. Grace did not lecture them about art. Instead, she asked them about strength. What made a warrior strong? What made a civilization strong? The Valerans answered confidently, talking about military might and the will to conquer. Then Grace asked if a civilization that conquered everything but created nothing was truly strong. Or was it just powerful? The Valerans fell silent, thinking about the difference. Days turned into weeks. The cultural exchange program continued. Maya taught music, showing how different sounds could blend into something beautiful. Nathan led discussions about the purpose of power, asking questions that made Valerans think about why they fought. Not everyone was pleased. General Kryn complained to Zathara that the humans were a distraction, that warriors should train instead of sitting in classrooms. Other advisors questioned the value of learning about art from a weak species, but Zathara defended the program. She argued that understanding other cultures made the empire stronger, not weaker. Knowing how humans thought helped predict their actions. The advisors accepted this explanation, though some remained suspicious. Then everything changed. News arrived that the Krell Dominion, a neighboring empire, was moving warships toward Valoran borders. The Krell had always resented Valeran power. They saw the alliance with humanity as a sign that Zathara was losing her edge. Kyle was in a meeting with Lisa when Zathara's guards arrived. "The Queen requests your immediate presence in the war room," they said. The war room was crowded with military officers studying tactical displays. General Kryn stood at the center, pointing at a holographic map showing Krell fleet positions. "We should strike immediately," Kryn said. "Send overwhelming force. Destroy their fleets before they fully mobilize. Show them the price of challenging the Valoran Empire." Other officers agreed. This was the Valeran way. Respond to threats with crushing military superiority. Let no challenge go unanswered. Zathara sat in silence, listening to her advisors argue for war. Then she looked at Kyle. "Ambassador Morrison, you have been very quiet. Does Earth have any thoughts on this situation?" The room fell silent. Every Valeran officer turned to stare at Kyle. He could see the contempt in some of their eyes. What could a human possibly know about military strategy? Kyle stood, feeling the weight of those stares. "I am not a military strategist, Your Majesty, but I can offer a perspective." "Speak," Zathara said. "The Krell are testing you," Kyle said. "They want to see if the alliance with humanity has made you weak. If you respond with overwhelming force as General Kryn suggests, you prove that nothing has changed. You are still just conquerors." Kryn's face darkened. "And what would you have us do? Surrender? Show weakness?" "No," Kyle said. "Show strength. But show wisdom too. Move your fleets to the border in overwhelming numbers. Make it clear you can and will defend yourselves, but simultaneously open channels of communication. Give the Krell leadership a way to step back without losing face. Diplomacy! Kryn spat the word like an insult. You would have us talk to those who threaten us. I would have you win without fighting, Kyle said. Is that not better than winning through war? You achieve your goal at less cost. And you show the galaxy something new, that the Valeran Empire is strong enough to choose peace. The room erupted in argument. Some officers agreed with Kryn that this was weakness. Others seemed intrigued by Kyle's suggestion. All looked to Zathara for her decision. Zathara stood and silence fell immediately. General Kryn mobilized the fleet as you suggested. Position them at the border in overwhelming force. Let the Krell see that we are ready for war. Kryn smiled, thinking he had won. However, Zathara continued, we will also open diplomatic channels as Ambassador Morrison suggests. Earth's intelligence services will help us identify Krell officials who prefer trade to war. We will offer them a better path than destruction. Kryn's smile vanished. Your Majesty, this is unprecedented. We do not negotiate with those who threaten us. Then perhaps it is time we did, Zathara said. We will show strength, but we will also show wisdom. If the Krell choose war despite having a peaceful option, then we crush them. But if they choose peace, we gain security without losing a single soldier. The plan was implemented immediately. Valeran warships moved to the border in massive numbers. The display of military might was impossible to ignore. But simultaneously, human diplomats made quiet contact with Krell officials known to oppose the aggressive faction. The message was carefully crafted. The Valeran Empire could destroy the Krell fleet if necessary. But they preferred a different solution. Trade agreements, security guarantees, recognition of borders, all the benefits of peace without the costs of war. For 2 tense weeks the galaxy watched. Would the Krell attack? Would the Valeran strike first? Ships stood ready on both sides, weapons armed, crews prepared for battle. Then slowly, the Krell fleets began to withdraw. Their moderate faction had won the internal debate. Faced with certain military defeat but offered a diplomatic exit, they chose survival over pride. Negotiations began in earnest. Within a month, a treaty was signed. The Krell Dominion and the Valeran Empire agreed to respect each other's borders. Trade would replace tension. The threat of war was over. Kyle stood with Zathara in the garden watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and purple. They were alone, able to speak freely. Your strategy worked, Zathara said. We gained everything we wanted without firing a shot. It worked because you were willing to try something new, Kyle said. Many leaders would have chosen the familiar path of war. My advisors are confused, Zathara admitted. They do not know whether to be pleased or concerned. General Kryn still thinks we showed weakness. What do the young nobles in the cultural program think? Kyle asked. Zathara smiled. They are beginning to understand. They see that the same perspective that values art also enables different approaches to traditional problems. Strength and wisdom are not opposites. She touched a flower, her expression thoughtful. Change is happening, Ambassador Morrison. Slowly, carefully, but really happening. My people are starting to remember that we can be more than warriors. Kyle looked at the garden, seeing it now as a metaphor for everything they were trying to achieve. It started with simple seeds, he said. And look what they grew into. Yes, Zathara agreed. And we have just planted more seeds. Now we must tend them carefully, patiently, until they bloom throughout the empire. As darkness fell, lights began to glow in the garden, making it look magical. Kyle thought about how far they had come in just a few months, from a tense first meeting to a genuine partnership, from dismissal and contempt to mutual respect. And this was only the beginning. The real work of transforming a civilization lay ahead. But standing there in that secret garden with a warrior queen who dreamed of beauty, Kyle felt certain they could succeed. The Valeran fleet moved to the border. Massive warships took position. They were ready to fight if needed. The Krell forces saw them and knew they faced a powerful enemy. But at the same time, human diplomats made secret contact with the Krell peace faction. These Krell leaders did not want war. They wanted trade and cooperation. The humans helped them build their case against military action. Earth's intelligence services provided detailed information about costs of war, potential economic benefits of peace, and internal political dynamics. This was not flashy or dramatic, but it was effective. Within 3 weeks, the Krell military buildup stopped. The peace faction had won the internal debate. The Krell sent a diplomatic message requesting negotiations. General Kryn was shocked. He had expected war. Instead, the crisis was resolved through a combination of military readiness and diplomatic skill. In the War Council, Kryn admitted grudgingly, "The human approach worked. I did not think it would, but it did." Other Valeran commanders nodded. They had learned something. Military power was important, but knowing when not to use it was also valuable. Queen Zathara looked pleased. This was exactly what she had hoped for. Humans had proven their value not by fighting, but by thinking differently. News of the peaceful resolution spread across the galaxy. Other species began to look at humanity differently. These newcomers were not just weak pacifists. They were strategic thinkers who could prevent wars before they started. Several other governments contacted Earth, asking for diplomatic assistance or cultural exchanges. Humanity's reputation was changing from weak to wise. 6 months after the treaty signing, Zathara made a bold announcement. She declared a new imperial initiative called the Valeran Cultural Renaissance. The goal was to recover lost aspects of Valeran heritage, including arts and philosophy. She framed it carefully. She said the Empire needed to understand all forms of strength, not just military power. She pointed to the success with the Krell as evidence that different approaches had value. There was resistance from traditionalists. Some Valerans thought this was foolish, but the Queen's recent success gave her political power, and the younger Valerans who had participated in the cultural exchange supported her. Slowly, things began to change. Art classes appeared in military academies. Music performances were held in the capital. Gardens began appearing in public spaces across Valeran worlds. It was not a revolution. It was gradual change, but it was real change. One evening, Kyle and Zathara met in the private garden. The sun was setting. The flowers glowed in the golden light. "We did it," Zathara said quietly. "We actually started changing things." "You did it," Kyle corrected. "You had the vision. You took the risk. I just helped a little." "No," Zathara said firmly. "You noticed the garden. That simple act showed me that change was possible. It showed me that someone from another world could see all of who I was, not just the warrior queen." Kyle smiled. "I am glad I said something about the gardens. It was probably the most important undiplomatic thing I have ever done." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Zathara spoke again. "Earth is being recalled for consultation about expanding diplomatic efforts. I heard the news today." "Yes," Kyle said. "They want me to help train other ambassadors in these new approaches. They want to apply what we learned here to other situations." "You should go," Zathara said. "What we started here can spread. Other species need to learn what you have taught us. That beauty and strength can coexist. That wisdom includes knowing when not to fight." "The work here is not finished," Kyle said. "No, it will never be finished. Cultural change takes generations. But it is started. That is what matters." She stood up. "Before you leave, I have something for you." She walked to a flowering tree and carefully collected seeds from its branches. She placed them in a small container and gave it to Kyle. "These are from my garden," she said. "Plant them on Earth, let them grow there. They will be a reminder of what we have built together." Kyle took the container carefully. He understood the symbolism. These seeds represented hope. They represented the idea that beauty could grow anywhere, even in the most unlikely places. "Thank you, Your Majesty," Kyle said. Then more informally, "Thank you, Zathara," she smiled. "Thank you, Kyle, for seeing what others missed, for understanding what I was trying to do, for helping make it possible." They walked back toward the palace together. Their work together was ending, but what they had started would continue for years to come. 5 years later, the garden seeds had grown into beautiful trees on Earth. They stood in the diplomatic complex where humanity coordinated its galactic relations. Around them grew plants from dozens of other worlds. It was a living symbol of connection and understanding. The Valeran cultural renaissance had spread throughout the Empire. Art and music were now respected alongside military achievement. Young Valerans could choose careers in many fields, not just warfare. The change was not complete, but it was real. Queen Zathara's gardens were no longer secret. They had become famous across the galaxy. Visitors came from many worlds to see them. They were a symbol of the new Valeran Empire, one that valued both strength and beauty. Humanity's role in the galaxy had changed too. Earth was now seen as a valuable mediator and cultural bridge. When species had conflicts, they often asked for human assistance. Not for military help, but for wisdom in finding peaceful solutions. Kyle stood in the Earth Garden one morning. He looked at the Valerian trees, now tall and strong. Their flowers were blooming. He remembered that day in Zathara's garden, when he first understood what they might accomplish together. A message came through on his communicator. It was from Zathara. She sent him a picture of her garden, now expanded and more beautiful than ever. The message was simple. The seeds we planted are growing well, both literally and figuratively. Thank you for noticing my garden all those years ago. It changed everything. Kyle smiled and sent a reply. Thank you for showing me that elegance and strength are not opposites. They are partners. Humanity is honored to be your ally and friend. He put away his communicator and looked up at the sky. Somewhere out there on many worlds the same lesson was being learned. Beauty mattered. Art mattered. Connection mattered. These were not weaknesses. They were the things that made life worth living. And maybe, just maybe, that was humanity's real strength. Not the ability to fight, but the ability to see beauty. Not the power to conquer, but the wisdom to build gardens. Not the skill to dominate, but the courage to complement an alien queen's elegance. That simple compliment had changed the galaxy. It was proof that sometimes the smallest gestures have the biggest impact, and that the most powerful weapon of all is genuine appreciation for the beauty others create.